to be Cube Sunday morning, and it is an
Yes.
incredible special day here for which I have my pitcher of iced tea.
Yes, I can hear you. I can.
Yes, Karen, I is from the South. I do drink iced tea, and it is pronounced pecan or pecan, however we want to. So, Karen and I had this great idea. It was Karen's, I admit it. Um, to do a alternative truce with a Southern theme. Okay. Now the only regret I have doing this is that we don't have a stock car story. I mean, there are so many gearheads with dust trapped in the grease on the underside of their car that not having them is painful. Now, in my waiting room, I have writers who have written for this. And Karen, anything you want to say about this book before we bring on the team?
I just want to say that it's. I was interested in Southern politics because I was spending a lot of time in Florida, and I watched the Clinton-Trump election from Florida, and I was fascinated to see in real time how different perceptions of what was happening were in Florida from what they were in Seattle. And I realized that having grown up in the South, I grew up in Virginia, the South is a very different place, and they see what goes on politically through an absolutely different lens than what is seen in other parts of the country. And that's why I thought it would be fun to look at not just Southern politics of the future, but Southern politics of the past, and try to figure out why it's the way it is. And indeed, we have a lot of people in this book who've written alternate histories where they've imagined something happening in the South that changed the entire country in a different way.
Well, we could go into a whole lot of what it was because the South had, well, the South's many of their formative years were built around the labor of others, forced labor of others. I think they called it slavery. But that's another story. Right now, I am in a lucky world where I'm going to bring on right now I'm going to bring on Jeff. Ooh, Jeff, you bring a hum
Hello.
with you.
Well, I'm in the back of my truck.
You're you're a truck driver?
I am.
And you didn't send me a truck driving story? Okay. And so what I've got is
Jeff is going to have to mute when he's not speaking because we are picking up.
Okay, we're gonna probably enjoy your company. We're gonna enjoy your company until we can't handle the rumble anymore.
And we have Alan.
All righty. So those of you in the waiting room, bear with me. Now,
Jeff, we're getting an echo, I think, from your source. If you mute when you're not speaking, then Bob won't echo off of it.
Now Jeff is in a challenging mode right now because I bought his story, and then somebody's got an echo going on. Are we still there? Okay, I bought his story, and then I said, oh, by the way, I need you to rewrite it. He wrote a wonderful essay discussing the pronunciation of pecan and going into the how bless your heart works. And then I said, but how can you add in these other 23 items and then cut a 30 of your words? I think how'd that work for you there, Jeff? Okay.
Put your volume up when you speak.
I'm in the middle of wielding a bloody axe on the word count. However, I think I've injected enough of what you asked about that it should be quite interesting.
Okay, I didn't hear that, Karen. I'm going to let you carry that since your hearing is
I
better
did.
than mine.
He says, don't, he said what we always say to our editors. Don't worry, he has everything under control.
Yeah, I've always said that to my editors.
Writers always tell their editors, and Jeff is on it.
That I told that to Tony Weisskopf one time when she asked for a different book. I said, "Sure, got it, ready to go." And then I told my co-author, and she almost killed me. Now, Alan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, just checking.
I can't get my camera to.
Now I'm only getting an image, no camera. But you wrote a book called Frank's First Gun. A story.
Yes, I did.
That come from personal experience?
No, it's a story that originally grew out of a prompt, something you've done for the first time or something you've done for the last time, and so my immediate thought was to write about a guy who buys his first gun, moving from New England down to where I live now, New Orleans, and because my experience was that up north, anybody who owned a gun, and living down here, I don't know anybody who does not own a gun. And
yes.
So that was, and in the story, the guy who gets his first gun, not being a gun guy, things don't go well.
Yeah, the gun cabinet sits in the living room of a lot of Southern homes with a glass front, so you can see them all. My father-in-law took me downstairs and showed me his gun cabinet. I thought it meant that he liked me because he's sharing that with me, only to find out later it was his way of saying, "Be nice to my little girl."
Right. Very good.
Okay, so anything as we're processing through, I hate to have you on to say, but what is the greatest piece about this book that you've on your contribution that people should think about when they're getting ready to buy it?
I wanted to echo something Karen said, which is the perception of reality and people's day-to-day engagement with the world is very different in my experience between the Northeast and the South, and even in this somewhat of a liberal bohemian enclave of New Orleans within very red state Louisiana. It's a very different way that people see themselves in the world and understand daily events and that kind of thing. So it's, and I think in terms of looking at the whole book, if that's a theme that runs through the stories, which I'm assuming it does to some extent, it's understanding people on the other side of that divide. I think that's a useful, important sort of role to play. The way you see the world living in Vermont or Michigan is very different from the way that people see it in Mississippi or Arkansas, and try to understand that difference. And let that be a first step in bridging that divide.
Yeah, it is interesting. I hope anybody having read this one is going to have a deeper appreciation that the South is more than rednecks with beer bellies. And that said, I'm going to let you go, Alan, and I'm going to bring on. Now you can hang there, and if we get a chance, if you get something, just drop me a note in the private chat there, and we can bring you back on the set. Now, Jeff, you get a chance to answer that same question. Hello, Jeff?
Yes. I must have missed the question. I'm having audio difficulties.
Well, the question was fundamentally, what is it about the story you wrote that should make people really be thrilled about buying this book?
Well,
Or your essay, in fact, in your case.
the essay, I think, adds a lot of foundation to that lens that Karen speaks about. It explains how to focus it, how to set the aperture, how to bring the picture into clearer relief, and I think it really does add to the experience of those who don't have a foundation of how things work in the South. Maybe not a tutorial, but a quick start guide, maybe.
Well, I gotta say, Jeff, I have enjoyed working with you on yours, and I'm hoping to see how it comes out. And I'm sorry we're having sound issues. I've got you turned up all the way, but I'm looking forward to buying more stuff from you because I like the way you think. Now you may have, and I'm about to drop you into back to the green room, and let the joy of Mr. Parks here. Now, Mr. Parks, you and I have we had a long chat about your story.
We did.
And have you sent it back to me?
I have. I sent back an edited copy. I finally decided on a path. I had 3 in my head, and I had 3 edits along stacked next to each other, and I finally decided on one. I sent it back to you a little bit ago. It's been a couple days, but yeah. And if you didn't get it, I will resend as appropriate. But,
did your partner, just a second, your buddy that just walked in behind you drop something out of his pocket?
Oh, I got it.
Okay. So, sorry, Bill.
no worries.
So tell us about your story.
So my story is set in rural Texas, and it's dystopian near future sci-fi. And the premise is that the main character is sort of a way station in the route to send women out of the state for abortion care, for pregnancy care, as the near future dystopia is sort of imagined that Texas has shut it down, specifically choosing Texas because of their sort of advanced legal methods on running abortion shutdown through the courts, even around Roe. Before Roe was overturned, they were using some pretty
they were putting a bounty on young girls.
Yes, and
I mean,
and I'm originally from Arizona, so I understand the deep red state politics of this. But the premise is they're running these young women across the border to New Mexico, which has sort of historically been like a blue enclave of liberal policy, nestled between deep red Arizona and deeper red Texas. So it's going across the border to New Mexico for various things. It has been sort of a recurring theme in the desert Southwest as these things have sort of shaken up and played out. And this one does not have a pretty end. I won't spoil it for any readers who are going to read it, but it ends as sort of as dark as you might expect this type of thing to end, in a near future dystopian, near police state version of the modern.
well, Project 2025 is guaranteeing we're going to have a police state, and if that gets enacted, and if They got all the Supreme Court justices they need to do it. Now all they need is a president and the Senate. And I heard it said if the Senate doesn't go blue this time, it'll stay blue. It'll never be blue again. And oh, and by the way, I know a lot of y'all don't always know my politics, but my politics are just a little right wing of Karen. Of course, that's another story. But Karen, anything you wanted to bring in, and don't worry there, Mark. We're going to get on you there pretty quick.
I want to say two things. One is I grew up in Virginia, and my mother, who was from Boston, would not let me tell our Boston relatives that we lived in Virginia. She made me refer to it when we were up north as the greater DC area because she was afraid that someone would find out we lived in the South. Now, in all fairness to my mother, I went to a segregated school and was in that school during desegregation, which I remember in great detail. And our next door neighbor on Friday afternoons had a newspaper delivered to his house called The Fiery Cross, because our next door neighbor, who was from Alabama, had been in the Klan as a young man and kept his membership the way people do. And so that was real South. And I also, my grandparents lived in Boston, and I can tell you that a lot of racial prejudice that we associate with the South occurred just as strongly in Boston. I was there during the school riots in Boston. So I like to think I have a perspective on both sides of the line. Plus, my mother spent the last 35 years of her life in Florida, and she died when she was 104. And I spent a lot of time down there during the rise of DeSantis, and got to hear a lot from my mother's Southern friends about what they just thought was great about DeSantis, and then what they didn't like in the end. It was very interesting to see where DeSantis crossed the line. And that actually is part of what inspired me to ask Bob to do this book.
Well, I look forward to, so anybody watching and curious, this book is, we're talking about having it out easily by September, which is why you're starting to see me bother you guys a lot more. Karen, Karen is in deep and abiding contact with an artist that we have lined up for this. And so tell us, I'm sorry there, my eyeballs aren't good this morning. Mark, yes. Mark, now you wrote The Gateway.
I did. Can you hear me okay?
Say that again?
Can you hear me okay?
Karen did what?
I can hear him. Can you?
Oh, heck, I'm old. I spent most of my youthful years in an engine room keeping the world safe for democracy while Russian bears flew overhead with their bomb bay doors open just to spook us. We were fun. But anyway, so I don't hear all that good no more, ma'am. So anyway, Mark, tell us about it.
Sure. The Gateway is set in the city of St. Louis, which sometimes considers itself the northernmost southern city and the westernmost eastern city. And it turns out Karen and I have some shared history. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and was also in segregated public schools. Virginia and the Upper South, the old border states, Virginia, Kentucky, Missouri, there was an old political tradition called the Whigs. And it's a lost tradition. The Whigs, the last Whig president was Zachary Taylor. And that's where I get my pseudonym from, Zachary Taylor Branch. I write alternate history stories. And I tell a story, all mine are about, or The Gateway is based in a world in which Zachary Taylor didn't die in 1850. And at the time, Texas was, in fact, threatening the state, the territory of New Mexico. Texas had only been a state for a few years and claimed territory that the New Mexicans claimed. Well, Texas was a slave state. New Mexico wanted to enter the republic as a free state. And the Texans were threatening to invade Santa Fe and take their territory by force. Zachary Taylor was president.
Could I bring you back to your story for this book?
Sure. Well, basically the idea is that if Taylor had survived, there would have been an early Civil War. And one of the aspects of that Civil War is Virginia didn't secede. It stayed in the Union. And the Whiggish tradition survives. So the Gateway 1976 looked like had the Whigs prevailed. A tradition in which slavery eventually, as the Whigs had wanted, was allowed to die on the vine. So it's basically trying to recover some forgotten history. It's I use the historical character of H. Ross Perot as my avatar of the modern Southern Democrats, or the Southern Democrats of 1970s of the Gateway story. So it's basically talking about how our very rational Whigs have created this very human-centric, and they are literally suppressing the technology that likes, the computer technology, would automate things and put people on. And the Whigs, in some surreptitious fashion, to keep that technology off the market. So that's basically the.
Are we having difficulties?
We are. Bob, I think I caused it. I'm going to drop out.
No, hold on. I think, hold on for a second.
Are we okay now?
Yeah. Okay, Bill. Mark, I think we got some difficulty on your vocals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, folks, in fact, I'm going to let you both go and bring on our next team with an award-winning British author. But Mark, remind me, because I want to get you a Sideways Award nomination for your story. You familiar with the Sideways?
Indeed, yes. Yep.
Well,
history award, yes.
Well, we've never won one, but we've certainly put in nominations, and we will, because you have a more unique approach to it than many I've seen, and I like it. So, Bill and Mark, thank you guys for coming in this morning, and I hate to rush you in and rush you off, and I look forward to having you both back for a more extended visit where we're not focusing just on this one book and all the writers, because I've enjoyed your work immensely. So thank you.
Thank you much.
Uh-huh. Okay, Karen, we're about to bring on our overseas heavyweight. Da, 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 da.
Hello.
Hello,
Good morning, Liam.
It's afternoon.
And we got Cliff, so we've got you ganged up on.
Hi, Cliff.
Now, Liam, I think is damn near holds a record for number of times I published him. I don't know what the heck it is. What's your degree in?
Physics.
A doctorate in physics?
No, just a straightforward degree.
Well, I know, but it's British, so it's as good as an American doctorate.
He has a doctorate in British physics.
Oh, I like British physics. You know, I mean, here it is. We have the pound. They have the pound. It's just that they get more money for their pounds. Oh, come on, a metric joke. Nobody wants a metric joke this morning. So, Liam, tell us about your story. And, oh, we got a cat. Okay. Tell us about your story.
I think the cat's going to take everyone's attention away, which is probably the way it should be. Which is my story, being not obviously from the south of America. I normally approach stories like this by tackling it from a outside narration, and in this case, our outside narration is a committee of aliens who are deciding whether the Earth should be allowed to become full members of an interstellar community, and for reasons slightly nefarious, they choose Texas to test to see if humans are suitable for joining. So I had fun with it. I mean, that's the whole point. Is I've got 3 different perspectives. It's called Best of 5, and it's 3 different perspectives of slightly different, kind of relatively stereotypical Southern. But because I'm tackling it from the outside, I kind of get away with that.
So really, you're the alien here, right?
Kind of, yes. I have been to the South America once for a wedding, but that was pretty much it. My one visit to Texas.
Well, I gotta say, I mean, I got a Brit writing about aliens in Texas. I mean, what more could you want?
It's always fun to write from that sort of perspective. You know, when I saw the sign, when I saw the call out, I was kind of going, I can't possibly write that. I'm not, you know, I'm not American. I'm not Southern American. But then, you know, as per usual, I came up with an idea and I couldn't not write it then. So, and then I couldn't not send it in. So it's good.
Bob, we have a technical issue. Facebook says the video has ended. So the broadcast is not working. Okay, to bring this in for everyone, we have been having a problem where Restream, the platform we are using to present on, stops streaming to Facebook. It does it unpredictably, and it doesn't warn us as we're in the middle of the meeting. It just puts a note up on Facebook. So I am monitoring our Facebook stream, and we have just gotten the dread, this live video has ended. It will be available to watch on your event shortly, which we don't want. We want it to keep streaming. So we're
now here's Karen. Here's some a factoid. It's still recording.
Okay.
I'm also still seeing it on Facebook Live myself.
Okay.
In fact, this whole conversation.
That's interesting. I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know, but I know this. This is probably my last Restream video. Last week, it was in the middle of David Gerald and Jim Wright were having an intense discussion with Adam Troy Castro, in which in the middle of it, it just quit. And then last week, it was Nina Karicki Hoffman. And so we are saying goodbye to Restream. B-Cube Sunday will be here, and we are going to continue this interview because what I'm going to do is I'm going to post it online.
Bob, people are saying they can still see it on Facebook. So it dropped out on my Facebook stream, but there are other people who are seeing it. So don't ask me.
Okay, so guys, we're persevering. Okay?
Carrying on.
And we're going to keep going. Oh, and Liam, I have to ask you this. How was your 4th of July?
Went very well, really. Obviously, you know, we didn't really get the news until the 5th of July, but, you know, we kind of got the result that we were hoping for. So it's all good.
Well, we all took the day off. I just figured, you know, I could...
Do you traditionally toast the ungrateful colonists on the 4th of July?
We had an election that day. So on this particular occasion, we had slightly more to celebrate or commemorate or whatever than normal. I normally basically send a message to my American chums on the 4th of July just to kind of wind them up. But that's fine. That's all good. But on this particular occasion, we kind of did get our independence. So yeah.
Well, cool. Now, Cliff.
Yes, Bob.
Karen made you rewrite your story.
I heard from Karen that it was actually your idea, but okay.
Okay, good. I'm
It
getting ready to dive in and edit it. Give it the post Karen edit, and
it's already perfect, Bob. I rewrote the bits.
oh, I know it's perfect, but you know, I think what's the word, wasabi?
I don't know. That is a word.
There's a Japanese word. I'm terrible at Japanese.
Wasabi is the hot.
Wabi sabi.
No, it is the flaw that brings perfection to a work.
Ah, well, I left one error deliberately in there for you to correct, you know, and you have to find it. It's kind of a game.
Oh, that will be good. So, what's your story about, and why is somebody going to want to buy this book to read that story?
So, unlike Liam, I did, in fact, grow up largely in the South, in Memphis, Tennessee. I also spent parts of my childhood in the Washington, D.C. area, although not Virginia, Maryland, and New York a little bit. But it was the main part of my formative years were Memphis. And so I grew up during the time of the Satanic Panic, doing things like playing Dungeons and Dragons in Tennessee during the Satanic Panic, which was an interesting thing to be doing. There were absolutely like relatives of my players. We couldn't say what we were doing because they would flip out. So we weren't smoking cigarettes behind the gym. We were just rolling dice and.
Well, now, are you going to go down to Florida and volunteer to be a chaplain and bring to them the words of the cleric?
Not that I'm not planning on it. I mean, we did go to Disney World earlier last year.
Well, you are following the fact that George DeSantos is now afraid that the Satanists are going to come in and volunteer chaplain roles.
I get you. No, we were in fact much more boring and not really doing the Satanist thing. But I do like, what is it that political group that's it's the Church of Satan or whatever, not the Satanic Church. One of them is like the real Anton LaVey thing, and the other one is the political things. And I saw an interview with the leader, and they were like, "So you really believe in Satan?" And the leader said, "As far as you know, I did." It was just, they're just like the most epic trollers in the history of epic trolling.
Oh, I believe in Satan. I know he's missing a piece of his ear right now.
I don't know. I just can't follow a guy who would lose a fiddle contest to some hick in Georgia. You know, I mean, no respect for that. Yes, the very subversive.
Now, so you guys know, Cliff is going to be back next week.
I am, and apparently not on Restream. So I'm excited to be the guinea pig of our whatever technology. I was thinking maybe teletype or semaphore. I'll just stand on the roof of my house. I'll wave some semaphore flags. Bob, you can wave back.
And then I will go to Google Earth, and we will take pictures of your house and whoever your guest house is, and get pictures of you on the roof with your flags.
It'll be beautiful.
It will be awesome. And
I like Liam Hogan's theory about the fiddle contest. That's
a
false flag operation there. Anyway, so my story.
Back to your story.
Yeah. So my story is, although I like BQ Press, do not condone political violence. My story is all about political violence. It takes place in a future balkanized United States, and there's a group of states called the Southern Coalition, and Memphis in the future is squarely in the Southern Coalition, and they have an underground railroad to places like the Western Free States, which I envision as Washington, Oregon, and California. And there are other, obviously, political entities that don't come up in the story, but are presumed to be present. So that's what they're looking at. And the Southern Coalition is very much, styled on Project 2025 and then amped up. And they have detention centers where they keep political prisoners. And the story is basically about a group of people that break into the detention center to try and free the political prisoners. And we see what happens with that. It's a very difficult thing. My protagonist is basically a normal person whose girlfriend has become one of the disappeared. And that is the motivating factor for her doing this extraordinary thing that even politically very left people might not do, might be too afraid to do in this kind of society. And I wanted, one of the things I wanted, first of all, the title was invented by one of my friends named, I had several friends named Mike growing up, and one of them invented Degenerates Against Memphis as a joke organization. And I asked his permission to use it for the title, and he basically said, hell yeah. And so thank you, Mike, for that. Yeah, so that's the name of their organization where they go and try to do that. But what I wanted to highlight, and you asked a question earlier, like what do people get out of your story, in addition to what I think is a pretty good fight scene, and a very realistic portrayal of this kind of thing. What people, I'm hoping, take away with is the idea that, yeah, there are, there's red states and blue states, but in a red state, there are really a lot of people who are not on board with the politics of the state in general. When I was living in Tennessee, it was a red state back. It's always been a red state, but the state legislature didn't have this kind of crazy supermajority they have now to pass the kinds of laws that they've passed. And I've seen it negatively impact Memphis, and it just breaks my heart, right? Because that's my home. And when I lived in Texas, I was there when Ann Richards was governor, and it was a very different state than it is now. Right, like I was there when, unfortunately, she lost to George W. Bush, not because he ran a good campaign, he ran a terrible campaign, or that she ran a bad campaign. She ran a fantastic campaign. It was just the zeitgeist, ushered him in. I remember she quipped that George Bush was born with a silver foot in his mouth. I mean, things like that. It was just great. She was wonderful.
Yeah.
But people don't, I think a lot of people who've never lived in the South don't get that there is a wide range of political beliefs among the citizens of the South, and they don't always line up with the state government or the local government. And Nashville is a bastion of liberalism in Tennessee. Memphis is not, but that doesn't mean that there aren't any left-leaning people there.
Yeah, for every Austin, though, there is a Dallas-Fort Worth metropolitan area.
Absolutely. Well, Memphis is more like that, the Dallas-Fort Worth. But
on Friday night, I got to hear Jimmy Dale Gilmore, and he lives.
I love Jimmy Dale Gilmore.
He was with Dave Alvin. They were brilliant, but he sang a song called Borderlands. He lives in Terlingua, right on the border. And he said to us, he asked Dave if he could talk about politics, and Dave gave him permission, because I guess in some cities they don't. And Jimmy Dale Gilmore said that what's going on the border has nothing to do with what you might hear on the news. He said the border is very different. He actually lives there. And it made me want to go down to Terlingua and actually see what it's like.
Yeah, I mean, I got a cousin's border patrol. His father grew up and lived in Brownsville. It's a different world than what But that's another story. But Cliff and um, Liam, our award-winning British author. Hey, that's his bio. You know, plus all the awards he's won. And we thank you guys. Now there are, as long as I'm here, there are also 3 other people in this book that I'll mention that I did not invite on this morning because they would be a lot harder to click the button to make them go away. And that is David Gerald and Adam Troy Castro and Jim Wright. You see, I have the power. I can click your button and not fear. But so I'm about to click your buttons and say thank you so much for not only being in this book, but for coming on board to talk about it. You're both wonderful folks, and I'll see you next week, Cliff.
You will, on whatever platform we use.
We'll figure it out. Maybe we should talk.
Bob, I need to jump in and say something. All of our guests this morning have been men, and there are tons of women writing for this book. We just didn't get a lot. Good. We've got Marlene. Represent. Yes.
Hi, Bob. Hi, Karen. Well, I could definitively say I'm not 2 things. I'm not a man, and I'm not Southern. I'm from the southern part of the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
I love
it. Here I am.
Very good. I used to be from the southern part of Manhattan, but I'm down on Park Avenue South. So.
That's
okay.
Nice.
Well, now here's the bright part. After we get to interviewing these people on the specifics of their story and their work, what we can do is we can go back and bring back the larger selection and have more of a group discussion there for the last 15, 20 minutes. Now, Karen, since you brought up the fact that I had mostly men, I'm going to have to step out for a second. So I'm going to let you carry this piece of the interview.
Sounds great. He vanished. Okay. Marlene, as you probably can tell, we've been asking each of the authors, and Ron, I'm going to ask you in a minute, to tell us a little bit about their story and why they responded to this particular call. Marlene, what called to you about writing about the South?
Well, since I cannot write about the South from my own experience, the only way that I could approach this was from my background as an English professor. And I had a lot of interaction with the University of Florida. And I was very angry about what DeSantis is doing to higher education in Florida. So that is the way that I could approach the topic. And I decided to make myself a protagonist who was a visiting professor at the University of Florida teaching feminist science fiction and Joanna Russ and feminist science fiction planets and what would happen to me there. And that was very easy for me to do. And that was the only Southern thing that I could do. And I go there, and there's a backlash to my teaching feminist separatist planets.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I'm concerned about stifling educational free speech.
Okay, I'm gonna move over to Ron and ask him a little bit about what about your background and your interests inspired you to write about Southern politics for us.
Well, my background is I taught mathematics in college for way too many years and ultimately decided that writing textbooks was not nearly as much fun as writing fiction. So that's what I do now. And this particular story is, I was trying to emphasize that the principles of some politicians and some religious leaders are such that if there was a world-ending asteroid heading towards us, that they would not only hold up the debate, but would think of all kinds of excuses not to go up and nudge it out of the way. So basically, it's a satire. I hope it has a little bit of humor in it. And the ultimate resolution is whether a principled act by someone related to these politicians can help resolve the problem or not.
It was really intriguing. I mean, it's certainly, I love the asteroid story as a trope in science fiction because it forces people to reveal who they really are. And I think in your story, it really did reveal the participants pretty nicely.
Thank you.
So, where are you in the South?
I've lived most of my life in San Antonio, Texas, and that's where we are. You were talking about Terralingua. I've been working on a novel for a while. Part of it takes place there around the turn of the last century. And of course, they have the Terralingua cook-off for chili regularly. So I'm fairly familiar with the area, but I've done more and more writing about including this state in it than recently than I have in the past. Of course, Texas is not out in the space, which is where my first love was for writing science fiction. But that's basically what I'm trying to work in now. I'm looking at alternate histories like your previous guest was, and most of those are taking place in Texas or the South.
Wow. It's funny. The one person that I've known for years in Terlingua is my best friend from New York. So this is a New York gal who took off and moved to Terlingua, and she loves it.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So yeah, I now want to go down and visit and see the border for myself.
Yeah, there was a big mercury mine there at one time. That was the main reason it was there. Is they mined out mercury and shipped it to other places. But it's different now. It's a tourist attraction.
Has that resulted in environmental problems for them?
I don't know. I haven't seen anything about that.
Cliff was talking about blue cities in red states. And
yes.
I follow a lot of folks in Texas, in Austin and Dallas, who write about urban ecosystems, the environment and development. And they're obviously in a state that really likes to do development. And they write about how the animal populations are adapting to that.
Oh yeah, we have deer running through our neighborhood, and I'm not that far from the Alamo, so wow. The animals adapted pretty well.
So, Marlene, tell us a little bit. Have you actually gone to Florida for academic work?
I did go to Florida for academic work, and I had colleagues in science fiction who were professors there. And in my story, I have an alien named Astra from the planet Advil, which because men give women a headache, and she lands and meets the protagonist. And I was appalled that DeSantis said that slavery was beneficial to Black people. To me, that was beyond. So I have Astra make it possible for DeSantis to be enslaved on a plantation for a day. And I don't go into the details of what happened to him. And he comes back, and Astra says to him that if you don't want to live your life as a slave on a plantation, you have to get rid of all of the educational lack of freedom that you installed in Florida universities, and you have to let everyone do what they want. And he agrees. So everybody lives happily ever after.
I have to say that Marlene has written for BQ Press a number of times, and almost all of your stories have a godlike figure who demands that people get it right for a change. And it's a very satisfying read because you know that the bad guy is going to get straightened out in the end.
Well, the godlike entity that is omnipotent and makes everything possible is always a feminist extraterrestrial with an amusing name from an amusing planet name. And I guess I'm the scholar who's the world's expert on feminist extraterrestrials, so why not put them in a humorous New York way?
You'll have to do a collection of humorous extraterrestrial stories. So like Justice from Outer Space would be perfect.
I think that's my everything that I ever wrote is humorous, feminist, power fantasies for women with feminist extraterrestrials who are more powerful than the most patriarchal men, and they can do in the patriarchs and do whatever they want. It's power fantasies for women.
Allow me to interject too. Also, we did publish a collection from Marlene along those themes called "When Trump Changed." Um, the only book I ever have published with his name in the cover and an image of his diapered bottom on the cover.
Wow.
Yeah. I sold a lot of T-shirts from that book.
I never had the courage to wear the T-shirt in Manhattan because I thought people would think that I was a Trump acolyte.
Oh no.
Like I could not wear something that was red with Trump on it in Manhattan. I wouldn't survive. I thought that they would get the wrong idea.
Dead air now, huh?
Oh, Bob has vanished again. He leaped in. I have been typing into the Facebook stream the titles of everyone's stories.
Oh, okay.
And I have to say, this book has a tremendous variety of writing. I mean, Marlene's stuff will have you laughing and rolling on the floor. I also thought the story with H. Ross Perot was pretty hilarious. But we have other ones that are just heartbreaking. I particularly want to mention, I'm scrolling around here in my list, a story by a woman named, oh God, it's Sarah Wiley, called The Great Georgia Lesbian Potluck. And
oh my God,
that sounds wonderful.
Well, Marlene, it's not broad comedy. It's incredibly heart wrenching. It's about a young girl who hasn't come out yet, going to a huge family annual reunion, and I won't give away what happens, but this is it's a story that really made me glad we were doing the book.
And actually, it's more of an essay. As the way she wrote it. And I will just have to say, it is one of the most balanced and touching looks at Southern culture. You read this, you enjoy it. You do not walk away saying, "Oh, all these Southerners are just a bunch of bigots and asshats." No, you walk away and recognize the integration of all types of culture into the South, and it's just phenomenal. Having I mean, I moved to Texas when I was in the second grade, and this was back when they still called people coming from the north Yankees, and were like really seriously, and it was a serious insult meant to get you to raise your fists. Yeah, it's a wonderful story, Karen. And if its placement in the book is going to be something where you'll be able to find it early. But anyway, I interrupted there just to point out that we got that Marlene book, and I'm going to go. Now, what is? I'm sorry. I'm looking to see. I wanted to. What book? What did you write again? I know which one Marlene wrote.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, the filibustering the asteroid.
Say again.
Filibustering the asteroid.
Oh yeah, filibuster. I love the take that had on the politics and the truth of politics. Whereas the goodness of the country, the goodness of the world, or the betterment of the world, the betterment of the country, all goes away into the concept of all politics being local. What's in it for me?
Well, even when people start out with the best intentions, if they want to be reelected, first thing you know, they've started compromising. So it's not a good field to be into if you want to maintain onto your principles.
Yeah, politics is the art of compromise. That's a given. And that said, how about, are you ready, Karen? You think it's a good idea to bring on the folks that are here and let an audience begin your questions, period, where if you have a question for somebody, say who and type it in, and I'm going to start bringing them on. So here I go I'm bringing on Alan, or the image of Alan. And here we go back again. And I even found a Cliff and Marlene, and I seem to have lost Liam. Bummer. So guys, this is the remaining writers. If you have questions, and while you guys are getting your questions, Karen, if she can carry the load, I'm going to look up Marlene's Trump book.
So I'm going to tell you guys something about the book project that Bob doesn't know. I will be writing to each of the authors in the next couple of weeks, confirming the bio they sent or asking them to send me one if they haven't already. And when I send out the request for their bios, I'm going to ask everybody for one song about the South that has political implications that they really love. I've been driving around and listening to, well, my hobby is Americana, and listening to Levon Helm and listening to Paul Simon and listening to all these people singing about the South and how it has affected them or what they're perceiving there. I was thinking of Paul Simon's Graceland, the night they drove Old Dixie down, stuff like that. So I'm going to ask people to send me songs so that when we launch the book, we can also online put a Spotify playlist for people to listen to. Bob is back. So do we have questions? I do not see questions yet. Bob is looking for questions.
Oh, hey, I've got it. I'm just pulling it up. There we go. Here. Okay, somebody's got their.
I think we're okay now.
There we go.
That is a big, long URL.
Bob, drop me out for a second and bring me back on. That may get rid of the echo.
That computer reference is longer than my book.
I'll fix that.
I think we're okay on the echo now.
All the letters sound like Trump talking. A word salad or a letter salad.
So Bob, we're going to have the book out. You're thinking early September?
Okay. What'd you say, ma'am?
We're going to have the book out early September, you think?
I think that we are there. Okay, we got somebody's got a second device on.
Or a second browser window open.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Okay, now the book is, like I say, Southern Edition, Southern Truths. I mean, and it went through a whole bunch of name changes, but we finally settled on Southern Truths. Uh, but since almost everybody has got their edits to them, and we're just waiting for a few of them back, the process works as those of you who uh, love anthologies and love the law should watch neither being made. Uh, but Otto von Bismarck will forgive me for that. But the where we're at is as we get all those stories, we put out the call, we get the stories, and we select the stories. Then we edit the heck out of them and get them all back in, and then we say, "But Marlene, I recommended this line to you that was a great line," and she said no. Okay.
I said yes. I would always say what you said because
the
I think
J.K.
you're
Rowling's line.
I always say yes to you, Bob.
Oh. We published a fair amount of work from Marlene, and so there's a running joke. But so we're at that point now. We're getting all of these stories together. We have a template for the book, and as soon as I get ready, we're putting the stories into the book, sending it back to the writer. Say, hey, did we put the right story in the book? And if they say yes, we proofread it, send it back to them, and then we publish it and make billions and billions of dollars. Isn't that how writing works? Hello? I mean, Bill, I can see you're there, and that everything I see there came from your income from writing, right?
Absolutely
Okay. Somehow I think maybe they misled me when I watched Agatha Christie or Murder She Wrote about the lifestyle of rich and famous writers. So, what question we? Okay. By the way, on the link, the name of the book. Don't know why Amazon's not letting me copy it right. It's called When Trump Changed. You search that on Amazon and you will find it. You will also find it on our website, bcubepress.com, which Karen maintains for us. And it is a collection of stories by none other than Marlene Barr.
Bob, I think you should also tell them the subtitle because it's inimitable. When Trump Changed, the Feminist Science Fiction Justice League quashes the orange outrage pussy grabber.
Yeah, like I said, it's the only one we ever used his name in. But that's the beautiful thing is, do I see a question? Yeah, where to find the link? Because they can't copy it. So, Karen.
Yes.
You've been remarkably silent, except for when I throw you to the wolves. What made you want to do a Southern edition?
I like the South. It's extremely colorful. You know how cartoonists always like it when someone like Lyndon Johnson or Richard Nixon is elected president and they can do this really vivid portrayal? Well, I feel that way about the South. I could not imagine doing a book on Midwestern politics, although it's really, really interesting. The South just it puts itself out there. It's very flamboyant, and when something does that, you just want to write about it. It's very compelling, and I also really like to hear from Southerners about what the inside view there looks like, because I've always viewed it as pretty much culturally an outsider, even when I lived there.
Well, the South has got some great writers.
Oh yeah.
Heck, I know it's not meant to be an epitome of the South, but I enjoyed Where the Crawdads Sing. And having eaten a lot of crawdads in my day, a few turtles and a lot of catfish, some perch. I like it. Okay, well, then my brain is just going dead this morning with the silence of where's our questions?
We've got a question. Bob, have you considered doing a series of alternative truths by region?
No. I think Karen said that best. The Midwest, I mean, what are the politics of the Midwest? What are the politics of California? Drive
Well,
2 blocks and it'll change. But I tell you what, there is an anthology we've got coming up on. We've got Evil Pets going to be, but I made a promise to myself. I'm getting these 2 books. This one and Scott's Planet are going to be at the proofing stage with the writers before I put out another open call. And that's because it's easy to get undone. And then, would anybody read a book that was, remember Alternative Truths, our first book, when we said, no, it can't be true? We elected this guy, or he was awarded the election because of the antiquated electoral college system. And now we're thinking about doing it again, only this time it's like the retribution tour that he's talking about. Would anybody be interested in reading a book about the revenge and retribution tour of a former president return to power? What do you think, Karen? Would anybody be interested?
yes. I mean, the thing is, the timing on that's going to have to be really fast, or it'll be happening as we write it.
Did you know that Alternative Truths took 100 days from call to publication? And we weren't, post-row alternatives came in fairly quickly as well. So were we to put a call out for something like that, say, next month, when a couple of books are in the final stages, I am confident that Cliff would already be typing his story. Mr. Parks would look up and say, what do you guys think, our fellow authors?
I think that I'm very scared that the reality is getting worse than the fiction. And since Trump came into office, I spent a lot of time writing science fiction Trump stories. And I think it's true that I've written more science fiction Trump stories than anyone. And at this point, I don't think that I could write anything that's more absurd than what is happening.
Well, I will tell you what, I just heard some bald, what was his guy, Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller just texted Marlene Barr, hold my beer.
God.
Well,
when I wrote this, I lived in a free country and I thought I was safe, but no.
Yeah, unfortunately, your Trump stories were trumped by Trump because Trump is so outrageous.
Oh, Karen was with a project that I got going on the side where we were writing. And it was incredible. We had this secret cabal of right wingers that had a plan that they were going to execute on how to. And then we had hackers got in and released it. I mean, it is like there is nothing we could come up with and write and plan and plot. The reality wasn't happening in front of us.
That's what I mean.
The problem I see with that is that if you put out such a book, they might think it would make a good playbook further and add it to the items they already got on the list. And there have been things in the past that people have attributed to reading in the fiction and then executing it in the real world. So that's kind of worrisome.
Well, they're already using 1984 as a manual, so yeah.
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 Or what do they say about The Handmaid's Tale? It's not a frickin' manual. You know,
Bob, I just sent you an email that is.
Huh?
I just sent you an email that is going to blow your mind about this book. But I'm not
About
saying
Retribution
anything
or the
about it
book we're all
publicly.
in?
Oh, the future books. Because guess what? As all the writers on this book, before the open call ever goes out, the writers that have published with BQ Press will get first crack. And I will tell you the Alternative Truth series that we wrote. Alternative Truths. Most of the stories that we published, thinking they were absurd fantasy of a shocking number of them came to be predictive. And it's just it's scary what we're looking at right now.
But when I first taught The Handmaid's Tale in the 1980s, I never imagined that it would come to reality. And I was teaching at the University of Iowa, and I dressed up in a red dress and a white hat like a handmaid just to do that. And the students were very upset, and they said, Professor Barr, we respect you, and we don't want to see you dressed up like a handmaid. And I never thought when I first taught this, and everyone told me that feminist science fiction was crap, that it would be the most important literature for our time now.
So what do you? Yeah, I mean, nobody thought it could be this way. What about you, Bill? What do you think?
Couple of thoughts. In having grown up in Arizona, and to be blunt about my politics, I grew up a very socially liberal Republican when those existed. So I grew up in a very socially liberal, fiscally conservative, foreign policy conservative family. I still consider myself homeless because I grew up in a world where I thought the future was a Republican Party that respected women, respected people of color, and respected human rights. That's the family and the world I grew up in. So part of my call to come and join the Southern edition was there. I'm not alone. I'm not unique in the diaspora of sort of Southern socially liberal folks who respect people, who also grew up with deep ties to things that are not by themselves bad, right? Patriotism, love for the country, love for family. Those types of things are not necessarily mutually exclusive, and the homelessness that leaves you feeling, and a retribution series would be, I think, an excellent way to call out the divides you've seen. I mean, the senator from my home state, Jeff Flake, very conservative, far more conservative than me personally, but he also retired rather than have to bow to Donald Trump, right? And that line of humanness, that line uh, of conscience is not dead. And I think that sort of thing could come out in a retribution tour, because I think one of the subplots is, how does it fail? Because I think it will fail, because I think that there are enough people in these states that are not toadies of this authoritarian version of something that has gone awry. I don't think the legacy of John McCain is dead. I don't think the legacy of Colin Powell is dead. I don't think that future is dead. And I hope it's not dead. And I think a retribution tour would be a way to call in stories, if it was subtitled and advertised, to maybe show an alternative where the retribution tour fails too. So I don't necessarily think it has to be a playbook for the authoritarians either. That's my thought.
I, I hope it fails because I have, as a veteran, as a Texan, growing up, living where I have now for 40 years, I believe the American people have a limit of what they're willing to put up with. And I believe that this, when Trump got elected, 1 million women showed up in Washington, D.C. with their pink hats on. Okay. And I know that in his looking back, he wishes he had called out the National Guard. But I think when the American people stand true to their values and stand up and say no, that it will be enough to make a whole bunch of the politicians that might have otherwise gone on board and said, we're with you, big guy, step back and say, maybe you don't want to call out the National Guard for this rally. Maybe you don't want to do this. No, I can't support that. Because I've always had the belief that, don't laugh, that remember J. Edgar Hoover theoretically had the files on everybody? I have never stopped believing that there isn't somewhere in the government, somebody, some entity, some organization that has basically the files, the internet searches, the data on almost everybody that when you go looking. And I got to believe, I sometimes look at the way some politicians have bent over and fallen to their knees before Trump, that he's shown them the files and said, do you really want to see this public? And that is an America where these people will say, hey, guess what? I'm willing to stand up and let my private self be exposed before I'm going to publicly support something as wrong and as evil. And I think they're going to need to see how evil it can be, how wrong it can be before they're going to be encouraged to do that. So I got to believe there's going to be bad things happen if the man gets reelected. But I also got to believe that America will survive it. America's going to stand up, and our values will persevere at some level. But that's just me.
Well, I admire that optimism, first of all. And while I'm not quite that sanguine, I will say that you raise an excellent point. Americans have more in common with each other than we have differences across political divides. And it's very clear that the Democrats are not a unified bloc. It's very clear the Republicans are not a unified bloc. And we can all come together and celebrate the 4th of July, celebrate Thanksgiving, do these American things that we culturally have in common, and no one has a monopoly on being American or on patriotism. And I think that people lose sight because there are forces trying to divide us and stoke the fires of division because it sells advertising, it creates engagement on social media, whatever. But the fact is that the differences are real, and I don't want to minimize that. But we do have more in common than we have differences.
I think the best example would be marriage equality. When the tiny little hate-filled minority that came out and said that we don't want this, they found themselves up against the fact that every conservative has a brother, cousin, mother, somebody in their world, the legal system. That can't be undone. Now there are going to be fights to undo it. There's going to be court rulings we don't like. But I think in the end, the reality of it is that things like that is what's going to wind up bolstering and consolidating American values rather than damaging them.
I am
and
petrified. I'm petrified that I'm going to wake up on November 6th and Trump will be the president, and I do not know what I will do if that happens. But I cannot imagine that Trump will be the president again. I just can't. And I'm trying to not let it seep into my personal daily reality. And I'm trying to say I cannot be this scared for the next several months. And I am that scared.
One of the things that worries me is that the matter of what's true, it doesn't really matter, apparently, to voters what is true. What matters is what they think is true, what they can be convinced to be true. And politicians have seized upon this. And if you look at the Trump campaign, you will see they spent much time trying to establish a pattern of truths that don't have any background, don't have any evidence to back them up. And as long as they can convince people that that's a fact, there's no telling which way people will actually turn.
Well,
so
guys, I hate to do this, but we are running way over, and I have a brief session I have to hold right after this. So, those of you who hung around, our viewership has actually increased. Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed participating with everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it, and Bill, and I'm having trouble reading this morning, Alan, and all of you guys.
Ron,
Yes.
So
it's great
I'm
to see
The
everyone.
rest of us are and more.
yeah. This has been a unique one, and I didn't mean to get off on my soapbox. I usually I have authors to do that for me.
Yeah, but you're a natural at it, Bob. I mean, come on, it's part of your talent.
Okay. Well, anyway, that said, I'm gonna end the stream, and goodbye, America, for a while. And just remember, stay true, believe in the best of people,